Hello, and today's date is the 9th of November 2020, and I started this journey doing resistance stretching way back in November. Within 2 weeks I'll have been doing resistance stretching, dynamic contraction therapy for nearly a year. It's quite hard to believe now. If you haven't already, please check out my other videos where I'll go into a lot more detail of how I was diagnosed with pudental neuralgia and a pelvic floor dysfunction back in 2019, and how I did breathing exercises, passive stretching, but didn't seem to get anywhere. Today I want to answer a question that was submitted to me recently, as well as talk a bit about the current state of my body and a few analogies as well. So somebody recently asked me, when starting this process, am I going to flare things up by loading my body, loading my tissues, doing resistance stretching? Well, the best analogy I can give to that is if you imagine a car tyre and you want to change it on a car. So you jack up the car, take the tyre off, put a new tyre on, jack the car down. So in order to do that, you've got to disturb the vehicle, the car, and it's the same with the body really. You're going to disturb the body by doing resistance stretching, so you're going to have flare-ups. It's inevitable. But we're hoping for a better outcome by doing that, because we're loading the tissues, we're changing the tissues, the muscles of the body. And when you start this process, it's a little bit like looking at the best analogy I can give is looking at a carousel, a fairground, the ones with the galloping horses. And if you've ever seen one of these carousels, they normally have mirrors on there. And imagine that carousel, you're looking at it and it's spinning really, really, really fast. It's spinning so fast that you can't see yourself. So the idea is you want to slow that carousel down, and it's the same with the body. You almost want to slow things down to try and connect where there's issues in the body. So, for example, which muscles are strong, which are weak, and which are inhibited. Because eventually we want to be able to see ourselves in the carousel. And it took me about 7 months of doing resistance stretching to even realise that my left glute was inhibited. It's basically, think of amnesia, a glute amnesia. There was no sensation there, whereas my quads, my hamstrings, my abdominal muscles, they released quite quickly within 2 or 3 months. And it could be because I was cycling, maybe they were stronger. So they're already very tight and strong perhaps. So yeah, after 7 months, I realised that they were inhibited. So it's almost trying to get that brain connection back with that muscle. So I'm doing a lot of isometrics at the moment to try and fire up the glutes, holding them for a very long time and trying to relax my whole body, to try and get everything out to not compensate, because there's so much compensation going on here. It's unbelievable. And as I previously discussed in my other videos, I got to a really bad point where I couldn't even walk. I mean, within 4 months of doing this course, I was able to start walking again, and the pain previously had been horrific. I had like someone pulling the nerves out of my leg. It's beyond your wildest imagination, really, just how bad my body had become. And it's almost like a self-diagnostic process, really. The longer you're doing this, you're understanding. And a lot of these people that are in this position, it's been caused by a number of different things, really. I mean, there's a lot of people who have been very sporty and it's developed. I mean, I was doing cycling. At the same time, you can be very sedentary. I sit down driving all day, which is just as bad. And I recently was talking to someone from Zimbabwe, and they brought their mother over to this country who's 70, and this lady walks over 10 miles a day and can also run, and she's in perfect health, and they don't have any of these conditions. And the first thing she said was, when she came to this country, was, what is it with everyone sitting down all day? Everywhere I go, I don't understand it. You know, what is it with all this sitting down? Sitting down is really bad for you. And when you realise what it's actually doing to the body, when you start to correct these things, it's even more frightening, really. Because if you look at the process of age, and I've said this before, I don't believe that, you know, we get old and, you know, we end up with arthritis, we end up going down, you know, we end up needing mobility scooters. I don't think that's natural, because we look at other societies from poorer countries, that doesn't seem to be the case at all. And if I just grab my cat here, Rusty, and Rusty's named after a cowboy I met many years ago in America who was 100 years of age. I mean, Rusty is what, 17? How old are you? About 14 years old now, and yet he can still jump, he can still go hunting, you know, he ain't using a mobility stick. You know, he's fine. Yeah, he's looking a bit old in his face, but yeah, but you know, he's fine. He's absolutely fine. So yeah, and you know, look at like these bodybuilders. Look at Dorian Yates, Ronnie Coleman. I mean, Ronnie Coleman, you know, used to lift huge amounts of weight, doing a lot of concentric movement, and yet now he's had every spine fused in his back. He's got a hip replacement. He's got traction in his neck. You know, I mean, that's not natural. It's not natural at all. And I don't believe any sport, to be honest with you, is natural. And I don't believe sitting down is natural. The body is meant to move, period. We are meant to be hunter-gatherers. And if you think about it, there's been 3,600 generations of hunter-gatherers since human beings evolved. And there's been about 300 generations of farmers. And then we get into more modern times, we've had about 7 generations of city dwellers. And of those, 3 generations, including myself, that have been very sedentary, sitting on computer games, going to work, sitting down all day, driving a car. Well, everyone's got a car now, haven't they? You know, and yeah, so that is a lot to do with it. And I do believe this is going to probably become an epidemic. So I'm going to now just show you a diagram of the state of my body at the moment, and just to get an idea where I am. And I would recommend anyone else actually do this, because it's a good way of, you know, trying to look at your own body. Right, so here we have a diagram. This is looking at the back of my body, and as we can see, I've done like a colour system here. So red are those muscles which are tight, difficult to activate concentrically or eccentrically, and even probably isometrically as well. Orange, which is a medium of the two, and green, those muscles which I can activate concentrically, eccentrically, and I can fire up isometrically very quickly as well, in a matter of seconds, and which are now feeling light to me and strong. So straight away we can see on both sides my calves have been a major issue for me, and they still are, to be honest. My hamstrings, they basically, I was able to fire up them very quickly, concentrically, and I noticed probably within about 3 months this sensation of lightness in the hamstrings and also strength. The glutes, which I probably mentioned previously, the bane of my life at the moment. My left glute in particular is very inhibited, so I'm doing a lot of isometric work to try and get that to fire up. The right isn't quite as bad. TFLs, both sides remain quite hypertonic. And just going into the upper body here, we've got the lats. My right is very hypertonic as well. Abductors I can fire up quite quickly. Not really an issue for me. Just looking at the front of the body, you'll see straight away the front of my body is in much better condition, to be honest. Shins, you know, not really an issue. Then we've got the quads again. They released very quickly for me, and they feel light now and strong. Abdominal muscles, again, I'm unbalanced here, and on my, you know, as I mentioned previously, my left glute is very inhibited. And funny enough, my my left rectus abdominal muscle and oblique is weaker than my right side, which I can fire up quite quickly. But again, I did release these quite quickly because I was walking down the street and had a sensation of an electric shock. I know it sounds bizarre, but I did. And it literally just the next day I felt my breathing change and everything just relaxed above it and below it even further. So yeah, that's the front and the back of my body. And as you can see here, this is I'm going to show you a clip. This is a view through the body. So let's have a look at this now. So here we have a sagittal plane of view of the body. So imagine you're stuck on the ceiling, you're looking down at someone standing up, and you cut through that body across the waist from left to right, and yeah, you're then seeing through the body from looking down on the ceiling. So straight away we can just see here the rectum and the pubic area, and just notice straight away the glute maximus muscle on each side, and just notice how close that is to the pelvic floor. Also notice the tensor fascia lata. As I said previously, mine is hypertonic, and on my left side my glute maximus is very inhibited, as well as the glute medius, which is important for walking. We also have the vastus medialis muscle and vastus lateralis muscles, part of the quad muscle of the front of the leg. We can just see the femur, the actual femur bones of each leg. And also notice the internal and external obturator muscle, both here, and we also have the external here. And as I mentioned previously, my symptoms primarily are coming from the left part of the pelvic floor. And what I've noticed as I start to break down all these different muscles, when I'm doing an internal examination of the rectum, I'm actually weaker internally on this side and this side, and that's because the glute is weak, basically. It's inhibited. And also as well, it's worth pointing out that the tensor fascia latae muscle does act as a synergist, so it works with the glute maximus muscle. So it's a case of working through all these different areas, but you can't just work this part. You've got to be working all these different muscles. And just notice that they're literally like pieces of steak, all very compacted together. So you can imagine if this glute maximus is not firing up, this is tight here. And imagine, you've got really tight quads up here. Then that's on one side of the body, and that's going to be almost distorting the pelvic floor. So this part of the pelvic floor, which is stronger, and this is weaker, it's going to be causing an insufficiency. It's going to be almost distorting that pelvic floor. So yeah, that's just a snapshot there. So this is just an X-ray that was taken on the off chance over 10 years ago now by a chiropractor, and he picked up I had mild scoliosis. As you can see, the spine here is off to the side. So I mean, one of the problems I've had is my great imbalance of all the different muscles, and on one side and then the other. For example, I've got weak left glutes, weaker abdominal muscles on that side, and on my right side I've got a tighter lat. And yeah, I mean, it's not the end of the world, but it's just another little obstacle. You're gonna have to work that much harder for anyone, I guess, with scoliosis. And as I mentioned previously, I was doing cycling, sitting down all day, and straining, going to the toilet for years. So these create even more and more problems, layer after layer. I just want to finish this really with a bit of inspiration to all those out there that might be suffering with pudental neuralgia or pelvic floor dysfunction, or might have hard flaccid. And this is from a quote from a Victorian 19th century poet, and this might resonate with some of you out there. And here we go. I'll just read this now. Though much is taken, much abides, and though we are not now that strength which in old days moved earth and heaven, that which we are, one equal temper of heroic hearts, made weak by time and fate, but strong in will, to strive, to seek, to find, and not to yield. Thank you.